respected KM Jorachan.
Yeah, Reverend Fathers, sisters and brothers, it's my privilege today to introduce and welcome the very Reverend Proto-Presbyter Heiki Huttunen to Sopana Orthodox Academy and its friends all over the world. Father Heiki, as we fondly call him, is well known to ecumenical circles as well as to all So Father Heiki is well known to ecumenical circles all over the world and also to all Orthodox churches. Presently, he is serving the Holy Trinity Cathedral, the oldest Orthodox cathedral in Helsinki, capital of Finland. He was formerly the youth director of the World Council of Churches in Geneva, the general secretary of the Conference of European Churches, and the General Secretary of the Finnish Council of Churches. Above all, Father Heiki is a close friend of the Malankara Orthodox Church, and he has very deep personal friendship with some of the leaders and theologians of the church, like Metropolitan Paulos Gregorios, Georgios Mar Ostatios, Mar Kurilos of Bombay, Mar Irenaeus of Cochin, Father John Thomas, former Secretary General of the MGO-CSM in New York now, and many others. And I have been a long time witness of his exemplary work among the churches and among peoples of very different cultures. So it is my privilege today to be with him and also to start a dialogue on the question of happiness. And we have agreed on that topic because, you know, Finland is considered to be the happiest country in the world. This is a reckoning by many international organizations. So being a faithful citizen of Finland, very much involved in the life of the nation and the church, Father Heiki is the right person to talk to us on that topic. Well, happiness, as all of us know, is our goal. No human being wants to be unhappy. Aristotle stated that happiness is the purpose and ultimate goal of all human life. But we know that happiness is a very tricky thing. I'm sorry, my video turns off by itself. Okay. That's fine. Well, I said it's a tricky thing because if I get a delicious ice cream, I'm happy. But as soon as I eat it up, I'm unhappy. I'll be happy if I win a big lottery. I'll be happy if a painful wound on my body is healed. Well, so for me, this is usually a happiness, which is contrasted by unhappiness very soon. We are in India now. India has a great tradition of ascetic and monastic movements in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in Jainism, which rejected this shallow understanding of happiness and which sought after what we call ananda, the bliss, the death, which is very different from the vagaries of happiness and unhappiness. Well, I don't go into that topic right now. Our secular governments have criteria for happiness, and religions have criteria for happiness. I'm sure Father Heiki will touch on some of these issues. Before I invite Father Heiki, let me say a word about Sopana Orthodox Academy, because some of these participants may be new to it. It's a new initiative with the blessings of His Holiness Catholicos Marthoma Paulos II, head of the Malankara Orthodox Church, and it's located in the monastic campus of Mar Basilios Dera near Vagathanam, Kottayam. One of its declared goals is to relate Orthodox theology and spirituality to human culture in general. So we invite distinguished persons from all walks of life, from all religions and secular contexts, to speak to us, to begin a discussion on the common good and the highest human values. Recently, we have started two study series, one on the Holy Scripture, beginning with St. John's Gospel, and the other called Paidruga Sopanam, on the great fathers and mothers of the Church from the 2nd century onwards. Many of you know the meaning of the Sanskrit word Sopanam. It means stepping stones, a ladder. When we gave this name to the program, we had in mind the famous book of St. John of Climacus, the ladder or the ladder of the spiritual ascent, gradual stepping stones towards perfection. And also we had in mind the Indian temple architecture, where the Sopanam, the steps leading to the holy place, the sanctuary. So Sopanam in a way very, very evocative about the intellectual and spiritual evolution of humanity towards the experience of God. So our programs in general are attuned to that goal. With these few words, may I invite Father Heiki Huttunen to speak to us. After his talk, there will be a discussion. So we hope we will have enough time for that. Welcome, Father Heiki.
Dear Father George, dear friends, fathers, sisters and brothers, thank you for these kind words of welcome, and thank you for inviting me to this very inspiring company that you described in telling us about the work of Sopana. And I'm happy to be with you this evening, and I hope I can somehow respond to your interest in the happiness of, in the eventual possible happiness of our country here far north. It's also a joy to be together with you this evening during the tragic time of the COVID-19 virus, which has prevented us from meeting each other internationally for so long. But luckily, through modern possibilities, we can see each other, we can listen to each other, we can share and discuss together. I'll start by saying a few words about my country, Finland, which is a small country in the north of Europe. As geographically, if you count the medium of the geographical position of the country, we are the northernmost country of the world. The mean, how do you say, the central geographical point of our country is further north than that of any other country, even whose northernmost point may be north from us, but we are the people who live in the farthest north. Because we live in the northern areas of Europe, our population has always been small, and even today we only have 5.5 million inhabitants. Finland is also specific in that it is located on the historical border between East and West in Europe. And so we have experienced the 1,000 years of our written history, wars and conflicts and conquests by the East and by the West. And actually our modern culture is formed somehow by these two roots. Although the Western root is the stronger one, and I myself, as an Orthodox Christian, I represent the other side of Finland, the side that lost the war, so to say, but who now, since 200 years, are considered a part of the culture and reality of our country. The Orthodox Church is small, although it has an old history, about 1,000 years in this country. But we are a small religious minority, less than 2% of the population. During the 20th century, Finland has experienced a lot of drama. 100 years ago, we were one of the poorest countries in Europe, with a poor rural population. And then we suffered a civil war in 1918 between revolutionary troops and government, and which was won by the government troops, and Finland did not become one of the first socialist countries as the attempt was, and then we suffered a great tragedy, like many others did, in the Second World War, as a result of which we lost over 10% of our area, and 500,000 people became refugees or internally displaced persons, especially among the Orthodox population. My father is a refugee from that area. And after the Second World War, our reality was very much formed by our neighboring country to the east, the Soviet Union. We did keep our Western societal system, capitalist economy and Nordic democracy, but politically we were not, how to say, we always wanted to be neutral, but that was not always possible in that situation. And also culturally and demographically, we were very much isolated. So the change which happened in 1990s with the collapse of the Soviet Union changed many of these things in Finland. Finland became a country of immigration. And our economy was more and more tightly linked with that of the West. Finland joined the European Union, but we did not join NATO. So politically, we consider ourselves more or less neutral between the big blocks of East and West. And Finland, culturally and politically, we identify ourselves with the Nordic countries. That means Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Iceland. And I think the themes today are very much linked to this cultural, historical, political, and social background that we have, and the similarities we share. And as Father George mentioned, in the last few years, Finland has been rated somehow one of the happy countries of the world. Also, a month ago, there was another release of such statistics, which this time it showed that Finland was the #1 happiest country in the world. And there is a great number of statistic calculations which speak of a similar results for Finland during the past 10 years or so. And these statistics are related to healthcare, to education and children's position in the society, to economic competitiveness and to innovation. And they are also related to low corruption, transparency in administration, and the confidence people have in institutions like the police or the defense force or even the media or other governmental administrative offices. Also, we are a country of a small population, So we have less environmental challenges, at least for the moment, than many other countries do. So we speak of clean air and clean water. Our passport has been rated the second best passport in the world. I suppose it's a question of access to countries. And so this kind of statistics have been seen. The World Happiness Report is probably the most universal one and the most interesting one. It has been published since 2012. It is the 7th report this year, and it is part of the UN system, and it belongs to a project of the United Nations entitled Well-Being and Happiness, Defining a New Economic Paradigm. And the World Happiness Report is based on information that they gather from Gallup World Poll, and it is one of the central features is that it asks the question how happy the citizens perceive themselves to be. What is the perception of the people? And the countries that typically rate high in this report are the Nordic countries, as I mentioned, the Netherlands, New Zealand, and Switzerland. Small Western countries of a high standard of living, as you understand. And the countries that rate lowest in these reports are developing countries, such as this year, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, and Jordan. But when we look at the criteria of happiness in this World Happiness Report, we can see that they are typically Western. There is the question of how people experience their own happiness. Also, gross national product, the GNP, plays a central role. Life expectancy has an important role. The question of funds for philanthropical purposes in the society is important. And of course, low corruption, transparency and such are important. And lastly, the questions related to one's personal liberties, freedom to decide about choices in my own life are in a central position. And in fact, the Nordic countries, the small countries in the north of Europe, rate well in these ratings. The Economist magazine in 2013, they launched a title which they called Nordic Supermodel, that the Nordic countries offer a supermodel for societies in the world. And I suppose my guess is that these Western indicators of happiness in society and how people experience that, I'm afraid they will still grow higher, and the difference with the developing countries will be bigger after the COVID-19 drama. But we shall see. In 1 year's time or 2 years' time, we will see more about that. The specific Nordic characteristics of a happy society, of the indicators that are being used, are the following. The role of education is high on the agenda. And the Nordic countries, with some others also, usually rate well in international reports on the level of education. Also, Finland does. So schools and education and the equality of the opportunities for children have an important role. The second area, which is important and typical for the Nordic countries, is the standard of general health care. The accessible general health care for all of the population. And then the sort of general infrastructure, roads, railroads, airlines, traffic in the society is rated high. And I also mentioned economic competitiveness already, as well as innovation. And then the big area of security, low crime and low corruption in the society. And for example, the question of homelessness has been pretty much solved. It used to be a serious issue in the capital of Finland, Helsinki, where I also live in the suburbs. But now we can say it is almost solved as a concrete issue. And then personal freedoms as well as gender equality between men and women, and how we relate to different perceptions of gender in the society is one of the factors which is typical for the Nordic experience of happiness. And I think I should add also that it looks like the Nordic countries would have been well disposed to manage their response to the COVID situation so far. But we shall see how it will develop. But for the moment, I think we can say what lies then behind this kind of success in indicators of happiness. Americans would say that the Nordic countries are somehow socialist. We ourselves don't recognize that very much because we have a very clear competitive capitalist economy, but we do have relatively high taxes. But because of the general structure of the society, people usually have a high motivation to pay taxes because we know it is being well used. And that's related to the low rates in corruption. Also, I think for Finland and our neighbors in the West, Sweden, a factor which plays a role is that we are outside of the political blocks. We somehow feel safer and somehow protected by ourselves. But that could be a discussion. There could be different opinions about that. And also we are small countries. So probably societal reform and societal decision-making is less complicated in a small country. What are the challenges? There are many. And I should say that Finnish people are generally a little bit surprised when we read these statistics, that how come should we be happiest in the world? I think we generally don't feel very happy. And maybe we're asking, what is this concept of happiness that we are talking about? But speaking on the same level of political and societal phenomena, we must acknowledge many challenges in our society. And all the time we are faced with the question of prioritizing. Do we prioritize economic growth, or do we prioritize social advancement? Do we want to spend money on schools and children's care, or we want to make sure that there are more jobs for people to earn money and pay taxes? Also, we are a society with a clear demographical challenge. Our population is growing old and older, and we are facing the lack of skilled workers in many areas. And this is becoming more and more serious. In the last 30 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, been changed in the sense that we have a number of immigrants, and that is clearly showing in our society, and this will continue and grow. We will have many people from different backgrounds in this country, we will be more and more multicultural and multi-religious, and we will have to adapt to that change. And this is not easy for everyone. So we do have a populist reaction to that. We could say far-right political movement, just as in many other European countries. And this kind of a mixture of right-wing social ideas, nationalism, and isolationism, and fear of the stranger. And we have the challenge of to our equality. Will differences in social classes, will they grow? Because they are almost non-existent in this country. But will they be introduced? And that might be changing surprisingly quickly. And how do people feel? How do people feel as participants in this society? That is one challenge. Then I would like to mention the challenge of how do we position ourselves in the world? Do we see the relationship between our successes and our being part of the dominant Western economies in the world, the European Union and the global economic system, which benefits our kinds of countries and does not support the development of others? So, and then Finland has a particular issue with its past in the last 100 years, in that as a result of our experiences in the wars, we are a relatively violent society. I think we are curing from that little by little, but compared to many neighbors, especially in Western Europe, we have challenges with domestic violence, with violence against women, and generally violent situations in the society. So, with these successes and challenges in our mind, I think we should ask what sense is there in putting countries in this kind of order, and what do we mean with happiness? In the Bible, happiness could be translated with another word, being blessed. And this is not a superficial understanding of happiness. A modern Russian exegete of the New Testament, Father January Ivlev, he says that in the Old Testament, it makes sense. It is something rather conventional, conventional happiness or blessedness. But in the New Testament, happiness is something controversial, something even opposite to common sense, something which is in conflict with this world. And and that is a really important point, in that in the New Testament understanding of blessedness, of happiness, we are sort of called out from our this worldly existence, and we are challenged to look at our own happiness and the happiness of others from a new point of view. And if we read the declarations of happiness according to Matthew or according to Luke, they sound like invitations. They sound like challenges, and they put somehow the order of worldly happiness upside down. And in order for us to discover real happiness, we should discover this challenge. We should discover the value of life, which is not in its outer organization, but in how we relate. How do we see the sense or the essence of life and of existence? And we could perhaps say that the New Testament understanding of blessedness is capability to grow, capability to see beyond, to look beyond, and the capability to put things into a new kind of order. Probably it is an ability to use worldly good gifts in the right way, to use worldly happiness in the right way. I think our church fathers like St. Basil the Great would say something like this about worldly resources that we may have, or worldly health and wealth, that how do I use my possibilities? How do I use my opportunities? Saint Gregory of Nyssa, who was the younger brother of Saint Basil, he speaks about eternal growth, eternal approach. We always can come closer to happiness. We can always come closer to God. And from this point of view, of course, the societal successes of the Nordic countries or of Finland are like a framework. And the question is, okay, we have these possibilities, we have these resources in the society for our lives, and then what do we put inside of this framework? How do we live inside of this framework? And I think the urgent current issues of global solidarity, global development, and global injustice in, for example, in economic terms, they put the challenge directly to us. We don't need to look for it. It's not a philosophical question. It is an imminent question for Christian lifestyle. The same, of course, with environmental challenges, climate change, and what that will mean and is already meaning in terms of calamity for humanity everywhere. So this challenge to look at things from another point of view are coming to us, and our happiness is very relative, and our happiness is like an opportunity for use. I would like to say that some like this we can see a positive value in these indicators of happiness, but we have to see the relativity, how they are really only a framework. And a modern researcher and student of Christianity, Karen Armstrong from the United States, says that the disciples experienced God's presence. They experienced the meaning of life, their faith. They experienced it in communion with their fellow disciples. And they experienced the presence of Christ as they experienced the presence of their brothers and sisters. And I think here we come very close to the core of Christian faith, that it is an invitation to communion. It is not an invitation to individual happiness or group, so within a group, but it is an invitation always to communion and to happiness, which is communal and not only for me or for my family or my group or my country or my kind of country, but it is a challenge for communion with all humans. Thank you. This is what I wanted to share with you as an introduction, and I could quickly glimpse at the questions which came. Probably I should try to take, or Father George is the moderator. So how would you like us to advance now?
Cam Georgian, please unmute. Georgian, please unmute it.
Excuse me?
Georgian, it is mute now. Please unmute.
Vijay Chacha, I think Cam Georgian is not there in the meeting. He must have dropped
Yes,
out.
yes, he is with us. But his device is mute now. Please allow him to unmute.
Okay.
Ronnie.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, I'm here, but the host was not allowing me to unmute. Sorry. I think there may be several questions. There is a question from Father M. Kuriakos from New York, Philadelphia. What's the impact of Christianity on some of these national successes in the matter of happiness in Finland? That is one question. There is Dr. Alexander from England, who is asking about the connection between the ideas of happiness expressed by Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount and the reality of happiness which Father Heiki has described here. These are the two questions so far.
Yeah. Yes, I think I am. Can you hear me now? I think my connection is it's on. The question about Christianity is really interesting because we, of course, our culture is based on what we call the Judeo-Christian values, but on the some of this development of the society and many of these values do have a Christian historical background, but the developments since the Second World War for the last 50 years and more has been away from a conscious Christian identity in our countries, in our country and in the other Nordic countries. So Christianity is very much in the background in terms of these values, and it is not always even recognized by people in our society. We are somewhat enough secularized that people don't even recognize the background values from Christianity. But I should also add that as you know, Christian countries have been involved in colonialism. Christian countries have been involved in many wars. We have given Christian headings or Christian whitewash to different selfish, imperialistic and economically selfish project we have had. So this is a very complicated matter how to interpret the role of Christianity in the development of European societies. I would also like to add that Finland is a small country, and we gained our national independence only 100 years ago. So we have a difficulty in relating to European colonial history. We would like to say that we are not responsible for it, because it takes a little bit of a study of a consciousness to understand that we have benefited from it in the same way as many others. And although we have not been directly a colonial power ever, we have benefited from the economic advances through the colonial era. So these questions are quite challenging academic questions. And I try to discuss a little bit the how to relate the concept of happiness that we see in these reports, how to relate that with the biblical values. And I think there is an essential difference. And the biblical values are as challenging to our kind of situation as they are to any other. And one could discuss whether how much do different kinds of societies inspire people to change of lifestyle, to a non-selfish lifestyle, and I don't know if our kind of society is any more inspiring for that than some others.
Okay. Thank you, Father Heikki. Father Heikki, you came to Kerala in 1980 with a group of young people from Finland, and you had interactions with the Mar Gregorios Orthodox Student Conference and its leaders. And since then, you have been keeping up that very friendly relationship. Now, you have heard about what we call the Kerala model, because in Kerala, in educational and medical facilities, the lifespan, the infant mortality, and all these things, we are in a way at a par with the most developed nations in the world. So this is our criteria, but the reality of life here is different. Maybe you too have that problem in Finland. And do you think this is the small size of the population which you can manage, that may be the key to the happiness of society, in contrast to India, which has such a huge population? And do you think this is an important matter?
I do. I think the small size of the population in the Nordic countries is one of the features which makes this kind of solutions possible in relation to healthcare and to school system, and so and it makes easier to make reforms. I think we have an interesting example in our neighboring country, Estonia, which I think is the best successful country of the previous communist bloc. It used to be one of the states of Soviet Union, but they regained their independence in 1991, and they have developed, both in terms of economy, education, and all social effects, significantly well. I think better than any other society in Western Europe. They have sort of found their own application of the Nordic model, we could say. It's not exactly the same, but one of the features they have is that it is a small population. They are only 1.5 million. So rapid change seems to be much easier in a small population than in large ones.
There's a question from Father Koshi about the decline of religion in the Nordic countries, because in India we hear a lot about that the happier you become, the less important the influence of religion in the Nordic countries. How do you comment?
Yes. Religion as religious institutions seems to be decreasing. The interest in religious institutions, yes, but interest in spirituality, in ideals, in meditation, in looking for a meaning of life beyond sort of outer happiness is as much present here as anywhere else. But we as historical churches are really struggling with this question of how to, do we need to reform the way we approach people, and what do we do in this situation when baptizing your children, getting married in the church, or any other religious practices are not they are not sort of automatic anymore. All religious practices are sort of challenged. But at the same time, people are interested in the meaning of life. People are interested in meditation. People are interested in prayer. And anyone who has anything to give in terms of spiritual teaching or leadership is much appreciated. So we are very much challenged as Christian religious leaders. How do we respond to this part of the interest? When the Dalai Lama comes to this country, tens of thousands of young adults will come and listen to him. But if the Pope came, I don't know if as many would show up. It is really a very double kind of indication. The Orthodox Church in Finland is small. It is only less than 2% of the population. But we, as long as we are, I would say that as long as we are faithful to our liturgy and our spiritual teaching of prayer of the heart, and as long as we are credible in our witness of our lifestyle, then we have a role to play. I don't think we need to be afraid of these new developments, but they are very real and healthy challenges to us.
Yes, Father Heiki, so you see a big difference between institutional religion and the quest for spirituality in Finland, and that's happening in many parts of the world, as I know. Father Reggie Matthew wanted to ask you a question or make a short comment. Father Reggie Matthew is here.
Please let me in. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Cam Jolson. Thank you, Father Huttunen. This Heiki, sorry. I was excited to hear your talk about happiness, and what I have learned from today's lecture is the Western indices for happiness has some problems, as you have mentioned it, with the challenges you face in Finland, etc. I'm not going to elaborate on that. Rather, what you said about the New Testament understanding of happiness is more important. Two Bible verses are very important in this discussion. One is St. John's Gospel, chapter 15, 11. There Jesus is talking about the vine and the branches, and then he says, these things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. And then Philippians chapter 4, 11 to 13. We know Paul was in prison, and but he is always talking about the happiness, and that the source of his happiness is his relationship with Jesus, and his understanding about the incarnation of Jesus Christ. And then coming to the Gospels, I would like to just say a few words about the passion narratives in Matthew and Mark. In Matthew 27, we read about the centurion who declares, truly this is the Son of God, by seeing the earthquake and all the wonderful happenings. But in Mark, it is a different statement. Here the context is not a miraculous earthquake or or any other natural developments. Here we see Jesus is crying with excruciating pain. My Lord, why have you forsaken me? And then Jesus dies. And by watching the method, the way by which Jesus was dying, the Roman centurion states, truly this is the Son of God. Those suffering, the meaning of cross, these are not out of a discussion of happiness. Truly, the cross is the gives the moment of glory in John's Gospel too. So I think what Father Heikki was explaining to us is very important, because in a discussion about the theological definition to happiness, the New Testament has enough proof text to show us that the material growth or the material pleasure, that is not the happiness that we have to aim at. Rather, the fellowship with the Holy Trinity and with Jesus Christ, who came to save the world, that is the source of our happiness. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, please, if you want to.
Thank you, Father. This was actually very important that you stressed this. I would just like to continue by referring to the concept of the fools for Christ in Russian and also in Greek spirituality, where the simplicity of life leads people to an open conflict with the happiness of this world. And it is a kind of special kind of asceticism to challenge the so-called happiness of this world. And that even we who are living a more conventional life can see the blessedness in suffering, in the suffering of Christ, yes, but also in the suffering of our fellow human beings. In Russian spirituality, there exists this kind of a special respect of people who have suffered a lot. So for a Russian Christian to go and ask to be blessed by a beggar is something they may do, because they see the identification with the suffering of Christ in this suffering person who is outside of any this worldly definition of happiness, and that we can see the holiness. But of course, human poverty, human suffering is not a blessing automatically. It is something which somehow challenges people and through God's grace helps them to see the real value of things beyond what we see, and so it's a very delicate discussion to have. But I think it was a very important point that you wanted to make, Father.
Thank you. Father Heikki, you spoke about the low crime rate in Finland and in Nordic countries. We received news about jails being closed down because there are not enough criminals to be incarcerated. How do you see that in Finland? Do you still have jails?
Yes, we do. But we also see the inefficacy of jails. I think there is a very profound discussion about what do we have jails for? Do they help somehow? Because we also have a high rate of people returning to jails. Somebody is convicted for a small crime, he serves his time, and then after a time he comes back. And he's not helped to become a more positive, a productive participant of society, but he somehow remains outside of the society. And a study not so long ago in Finnish prisons showed that 80% of the male incarcerated people had grown up without a father figure in their life. So we must tackle these background issues. And I think our experience is that the more you help people to return to or to discover a normal life after prison, the more you help the society. And of course, the more you help these individuals. But if you have a very strict system concentrating on punishment and on isolation, that will not give very good results.
Father Heiki, there are many questions, but we need to close this session. And just representing many people, I would like to ask you one more question. This is about the future of Western Europe, including the Nordic countries, I mean, because you spoke about the multi-religious, multicultural situation of Europe because of the immigration, etc. So how do you see the European cultural landscape in the next 20 or 30 years in terms of race, in terms of religion, culture, and so on?
I think it is a healthy development. Of course, there are many features to it. There are many challenges in when people move from one culture, one country to the other. They enter another reality. There is a lot of personal tragedy. There are a lot of challenges, but at the same time, there are a lot of opportunities. And I think our life is becoming more normal, so to say. I think it is normal for people, different kinds of people, to relate to each other. It is normal for different cultures to relate with each other. It is normal for different religions to relate to each other. And I think our churches are re-entering a more interacting relationship with the rest of humanity. We don't need to pretend we are the majority. I don't know if practicing Christians ever were a majority in any country. And how important is it? Should we talk about majorities and minorities in religious terms or in cultural terms? It is much more healthy that we see ourselves as one of the contributors to human culture and to human life, and that we find a way to do our mission among these people, to do our service among these people, to live as true Christians among everybody else, and to learn to respect people of other kind of conviction, of other religion, of other culture, and then also to welcome this multiplicity of gifts into our churches themselves. So basically, I think it's a healthy development, and of course, we in the Nordic countries, I think we hope that we could integrate this multicultural development into the reality of the benefits, the good parts of our social life, so that we could be a more participatory society, a more open society, and a more society which gives space to different cultures and different expressions. And I'm sure that the arrival of people from more religious cultures into our secularized culture will help religions, including Christianity, in this new situation. So I'm basically optimist about this future. And one good example is the miracle which happened with football, that Finland, which is not a football playing country historically, entered the European Championships, which are now going on, and at least half of our team are immigrant or children of people from other countries and other cultures. So it shows the positive impact of multicultural reality to all of our people.
Thank you, Father Heikki. Yes, I hope there will be more Indian restaurants everywhere in Finland.
Yes.
Yes. Father Heikki, you live very close to the Arctic Circle, and you also have the great phenomenon called the midnight sun. Amazing. So we are very happy to share the warmth of friendship and love with you between the North and the South in every sense. Globally. So thank you. I would say personally, my thanks to you, but our Associate Director, Father Bijesh Philip will now propose the formal vote of thanks. But please
Thank
come
you.
back to India. You are most welcome. And to Kerala, yes.
Thank you.
Father Bijesh. Yes. Father Bijesh.
Dear friends,
Yes.
let us extend a hearty thanks to Very Reverend Heiki Huttunen for his insightful and thought-provoking sharing on happiness in statistics and in reality, with special reference to the situation of Finland, his mother country. It was really a wonderful and informative session. He mentioned about various criteria for the assessment with regard to this happiness index. For example, healthcare, low corruption, good governance, confidence in government, media, low crime rate, less environmental challenge, and many, many things. These external factors are very important. To a certain extent, happiness is dependent on these kind of situations. But he also rightly mentioned that this is a framework only. But we have to see beyond this. So he was drawing our attention to the gospel perspective, which is inviting us to have a creative response to the situation. Happiness is also related to how we discipline our desires and passions and how we contribute towards a just and peaceful society. We heard about it. He said New Testament blessedness is capability to see beyond and also to use worldly gifts in the right way. It is connected to our compassionate acts and communion with our Lord and God. Hope that this session will continue to motivate us to reflect on higher and holistic vision of happiness to make our world a happier one. On behalf of Sopana Orthodox Academy and all who participate in this webinar, let me say a very, very big thanks to Very Reverend Heiki Huttunen. I would like to especially express our gratitude to Reverend Father Dr. K.M. George for his unfaltering support and providing opportunities to organize these kind of enlightening programs. My deep sense of appreciation and thanks to all participants from all over the world. There were many distinguished participants who chose to be live with us and attended this meeting with great enthusiasm. Thanks to you all. We are very much grateful to Mr. Ronnie David from Bangalore for all the technical support and assistance. Thanks to you all. His Grace Givarismar Kurilos Metropolitan called me and told me that he would try to attend this meeting, and he also told me that Very Reverend Heiki is a close friend of him. If Tirumeni is present here, I request Tirumeni to say a word of prayer and give benediction.